Oh my God, he just slapped her. A scream tore through the air of the upscale Manhattan restaurant. In mere seconds, the hand of a millionaire hailed as America's youngest investment king struck the face of his 8-month pregnant wife, all because she dared to approach him during his dinner with his mistress. The slap rang out like a gunshot, igniting an unprecedented media storm. That night, the video spread across social media, sparking millions of outraged comments. By morning, as a black Bentley pulled up to the Manhattan courthouse, every camera was ready. The man who once thought himself untouchable was about to face reality, and the world was watching. Could power buy forgiveness, or would it only expose more sins? Before dawn, New York awoke to a news frenzy. Across Times Square, screens blared the same headline. Millionaire Ethan Cole, Wall Street's most powerful young investor, under investigation for assaulting his pregnant wife. The chaotic sounds of car horns, murmurs, and flashing media lights wove into a jarring symphony. In her Park Avenue penthouse, Isabel sat quietly by the window. The dawn's light filtered through thick glass, reflecting her weary face. Her hands tightly gripped her wedding ring. Memories of the previous night lingered like a nightmare she wished to forget. But out there, the world had turned it into the year's hottest story. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Reporters, lawyers, even old friends all asking the same question. Are you okay? Across the city, Ethan sat in his empty office. The room, once a symbol of power, now felt like a glass prison. Online news danced across his screen, each headline slicing into his pride. Shareholders called relentlessly. The PR team begged for a public statement, while his lawyer stressed, "Every word you say now could be used against you." He stayed silent. For the first time in years, silence scared him more than failure. Outside his building, a crowd gathered. Signs reading number "Justice for Isabel" rose high in the wind. News channels brought in psychologists, lawyers, and activists to analyze, debate, and dissect every frame of the video. The story was no longer just theirs. It had become a mirror, reflecting the dark truths hidden in a glamorous world. When fame overshadows humanity. Isabel stood, walking slowly to the large bedroom mirror. She placed a hand on her belly, closing her eyes. Amid the clicking cameras outside, she heard the faint heartbeat within her, the only rhythm keeping her grounded. A notification appeared on her phone. Manhattan court summons Ethan Cole tomorrow morning. She took a deep breath. In that moment, Isabel knew the story no longer belonged to the past. It was moving forward, and she would decide its direction. That morning, the city buzzed as usual, but the air carried a heaviness, as if New York held its breath. On newsstands across sidewalks, bold headlines screamed, "Millionaire Ethan Cole faces court today, financial hero or symbol of decay." Cameras crowded the courthouse, their lenses glinting coldly in the early light. Inside, footsteps echoed like a countdown to an inevitable morning. Ethan sat in his car, staring out through tinted glass. Flashing lights pierced the haze, and for the first time, he no longer saw them as signs of success. He recalled standing on conference stages, his confident smile reflected on giant screens. Now, that smile had become evidence of a different man, distant, cold, arrogant. His lawyer whispered, "Today isn't about saving your reputation. It's about salvaging what dignity you have left." The words made Ethan lower his head, as if hearing his conscience's true voice for the first time. Meanwhile, across town, Isabel sat with her lawyer in a small room, soft light spilling over a wooden table. She stared silently at the neatly arranged documents before her. People told her, "You did the right thing by speaking out." But in her heart, she felt no victory, only a deep emptiness. She never wanted to be a symbol, nor to have her private life dissected publicly. She just wanted peace. Outside, social media raged. Millions shared, judged, and clashed with opposing views. Some defended Isabel, the brave woman who stood up. Others justified Ethan, citing pressure and exhaustion at the top. Amid the two waves, one thing became clear. People didn't truly care about the truth. They just wanted a story to talk about. Isabel looked up, gazing out the window as the sky brightened. She whispered, "Silence has its own weight, and today, I'll let it speak for me." At the courthouse, as Ethan stepped out of the car, the media surged like a tidal wave. He felt every flash sear into him, like a spotlight of judgment. No one spoke. But in their eyes, he saw another verdict: society's judgment. And that shook him more than the judge's gavel ever could. The next morning, the city felt different. A thin rain draped the bustling streets in a gray veil. Under flickering traffic lights, soaked newspapers bore Ethan's image leaving the courthouse, his face stern, eyes deep as if peering into himself. Across town, Isabel sat in a newly rented apartment, free of lavish frames or trophies. Only silence and her baby's heartbeat filled the space. She received hundreds of messages from strangers, support, empathy, even venom. She didn't respond. She only looked in the mirror, asking herself, when the world speaks for you, is there room for your true voice? One afternoon, her lawyer brought a stack of documents: partnership contracts, exclusive interview offers. All wanted to turn her pain into a consumable story. Isabel shook her head. She didn't want to be a symbol, only a mother. But she knew her silence now carried a different weight. She needed to make it mean something. Meanwhile, Ethan was isolated in his once iconic penthouse. No more laughter from colleagues, no calls from investors. He turned on the TV, seeing himself in the evening news, his face spliced between plummeting stock charts and psychologists' commentary. He switched it off, sitting in silence. For the first time, he didn't seek excuses. He began writing short, scribbled journal entries. Not for the press, not for his lawyer, just to understand what made him become that man. At the same time, Isabel visited small galleries around Chelsea places where she once found peace. Each painting she saw reflected a piece of her life. Dark patches, cracks, then faint glimmers spreading outward. That evening, she emailed an old friend who ran a women's artist support organization. Her message was brief. I want to start again. Not with the past, but with light. The days that followed brought a gentler New York sky. The persistent rain stopped, and the first rays of sun pierced the glass towers, as if washing away the city's gloom. Isabel sat by a small cafe window, her notebook open. Its pages held sketches, a gallery space, small rooms named Breath, Begin Again, Silence and Light. She envisioned a space where women could share their hearts, not through interviews or headlines, but through art. Each painting, each note, each frame would tell a story. When her friend Grace saw the sketches, she clasped Isabel's hand tightly. You've found a purpose, Grace said. Not to forget, but to transform. For the first time in months, Isabel smiled, not a forced smile for the cameras, but one of someone rediscovering herself. Across town, Ethan sat alone in his quiet apartment. Everything that once fueled his Pride Awards, project models, Forbes covers gathered dust. He wrote endlessly, words piling atop words, apologies left unsaid, wishes for forgiveness he knew he might never receive. But for the first time, Ethan faced himself: no titles, no spotlight, just the man within. Isabel received a message from Grace. We can borrow a Brooklyn space next month. Are you ready? She looked out at the street, where children played under the sun, their laughter echoing through the open window. She placed a hand on her belly, nodding softly. Yes, it's time. In April, New York bloomed with unusual clarity. The last chill of winter faded, and tiny green buds sprouted along Brooklyn's avenues. Isabel stood in an empty warehouse, sunlight flooding through cracked glass windows. She spun around, imagining what this place could become. An art gallery for women who'd walked through darkness to find their voice again. We can start here, Grace said, holding a stack of blueprints, her eyes sparkling. The wooden floor stays. It's old, but soulful. The western light will embrace the paintings. Isabel smiled. She envisioned the walls alive with art, faces gathering to light up the space. No skyscrapers, no boardrooms. Just light, color, and true stories. In the days that followed, she and a team of volunteers cleaned, painted walls, installed lights, and set up easels. Each team member carried their own past lost dreams, rediscovered faith, or simply a desire to contribute. Isabel didn't pry, only listened. She knew the magic of sharing lay in understanding, not questions. As the room took on a new life, she felt a different energy. Each stroke of paint, each brush stroke, seemed to mend the cracks in her own heart. At night, when others left, she stayed, sitting by a massive blank canvas, painting shapes from her memories, not to relive pain, but to resolve it. She mixed colors with the warmth of sunset, hints of hopeful green, and accents of vibrant gold, symbols of faith that dawn would always return. One evening, while cleaning brushes, she heard a knock. It was Grace, holding a steaming coffee. "You know," Grace said softly, "the team says they feel peace here, like this room listens." Isabel glanced at the golden streetlights outside, her voice low. "Maybe because it doesn't judge. Here, everyone can be themselves." She paused, then added, "Sometimes, what we need isn't to forget our wounds, but a safe place to hold them, to look back and see how far we've come." Grace fell silent. In that moment, she understood why Isabel chose this path, not loud, not vengeful, just quietly building a world where healing took tangible form. As the opening day neared, Isabel sent handwritten invitations to old friends, colleagues, and those who'd sent supportive messages. Each letter carried the same line: "Come and share your own light." No one knew exactly what she'd display, but curiosity, empathy, and admiration made that spring's opening one of the warmest events of the season. The room glowed with sunlight. White walls held paintings transitioning from dark to bright. At the center, Isabel placed a large piece titled "Resilience." It depicted no person or object, only bursts of light colliding, radiating like the sun after a storm. Visitors paused. Some smiled, others wept. A journalist asked, "Why light?" Isabel answered, her voice soft as a breeze, "Because darkness isn't the opposite of light. It's just where light hasn't reached yet. And when we bring light in, darkness fades." After the opening, she stood alone in the quiet room. Afternoon sun poured through the glass, glinting off wet paint, making the space shimmer like a lake. Isabel closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Peace rose within her, not because everything was perfect, but because she'd crossed the boundary of fear. June arrived with radiant golden sunlight. The small street housing the light gallery grew livelier. Each afternoon, wide glass doors welcomed visitors, not just to see art, but to share their own stories. Isabel sat by the window, paint-stained hands glowing in the sunday. She'd just finished teaching a group of young women drawn to her, not for fame, but for trust. "Here," she said, her voice gentle, "there's no right or wrong in art, only things we haven't dared to say." The walls held dozens of paintings, seas, skies, closed eyes in peaceful repose. Each was a piece of its creator's soul, raw, painful, yet alive. When the women laughed or cried together, Isabel realized healing wasn't forgetting, but daring to tell one's story in a new language. A young girl, Lila, said hesitantly, "I used to think the world would never understand me, but when I paint, I'm not alone anymore." Isabel smiled, taking her hand. "No one's truly alone. We just need the right place to be heard." At night, when the room emptied, Isabel gazed at the drying paintings. Golden light cast a small galaxy on the walls. She jotted in her notebook, "Every soul has its own color. When they meet, the world shines brighter." Across town, Ethan lived simply in a rented apartment near Riverside Park. No more suits, no lavish meetings. He woke early, working at a nonprofit supporting homeless youth. At first, he joined to stay busy. But something changed. One morning, while teaching a boy to draw, the child looked up and asked, "Have you ever been afraid you weren't good enough?" Ethan froze. He met the boy's clear eyes and said quietly, "Every day." The answer made the boy smile. In that moment, Ethan realized redemption wasn't fixing the past, but using the present to do better. From then on, he spent more time at the center. He taught teamwork, organized art fundraisers. Instead of success speeches, he shared stories of failure, of what he'd lost. People began to see him not as a fallen tycoon, but as a man learning to be human again. One day, Grace, Isabel's friend, visited the gallery with an art magazine. Its cover featured Isabel amid vibrant colors, with a bold headline, "Art is Healing, the story of a woman bringing light to lost souls." Grace handed it to her, eyes gleaming. "See? They're starting to understand. Not your past, but what you're creating." Isabel flipped through, smiling. "The best part is when they don't just see me, but themselves in it." That night, after a small exhibition, Isabel walked along the Hudson River. Cool wind carried the scent of salt and distant pine. A guitar's low, warm melody drifted from afar. A man played for a group of kids, streetlights softly illuminating his face. Isabel couldn't see clearly, only his slightly hunched form, fingers clumsy but sincere. She smiled, walking on. She didn't know it was Ethan, and perhaps didn't need to. This journey was no longer about two people, but two souls learning to forgive themselves. Back home, Isabel opened her laptop. A new email from an anonymous sender read, "Thank you for creating that place. Because of light, I know I can start again." She touched the screen, eyes misty. Outside, the city hummed. Car horns faded, replaced by street music and laughter. Isabel whispered, like a promise to herself, "Tomorrow, we keep going, because light never stops." The following autumn, Central Park's trees turned honey gold. Cool air heralded a new season, but for Isabel, it marked a longer journey. Light was no longer just a Brooklyn gallery, but a community art movement spreading across America. Cities like Chicago, Seattle, and Austin hosted Lighthouse Studios, where women, teens, and those recovering from trauma gathered to share, create, and heal. Each month, Isabel received hundreds of letters and photos of impromptu exhibitions, vibrant paintings, and heartfelt notes. "I found myself here." She read each one, feeling warmth from strangers. If she once created light to save herself, now she continued it to ensure others weren't alone. In late October, she was invited to San Francisco for the Art and Life Reconstruction Forum. The event gathered artists, therapists, and community workers. As she stepped onto the stage, she saw hundreds of expectant, trusting faces. Speaking slowly, without a script, she said, "Some darkness can't be erased, but we can learn to live with it through our own small light. Each time you tell your story, a lamp is lit. And when enough lamps shine, the world is no longer dark." The audience stood, applauding. In the back row, Ethan sat quietly. He wasn't there for forgiveness, but to witness. A friend from his nonprofit had mentioned the forum, unaware the speaker was Isabel. He'd hesitated before entering, heart pounding as her voice filled the mic, still warm, resolute, now carrying a strange strength, the power of someone who'd let go of resentment. After her talk, he didn't approach. He stood outside, watching the crowd swarm for photos and autographs. As Isabel left, she caught a familiar glance in the crowd, brief, but enough to stir her heart. No words, no tears, just a slight nod, as if both acknowledged the past was closed. That afternoon, Isabel walked along San Francisco's coast. Waves rolled steadily, light stretching across the water. The breeze carried salt and pine. She slipped off her shoes, letting cold sand touch her feet, laughing softly. It had been so long since she felt truly free, unburdened, no roles to play. Her phone buzzed. Grace texted, "Isabel, Light just got national funding. We'll have our own center next year." She laughed, tears falling unnoticed. On a distant hill, Ethan gazed at the sea. He'd chosen a hotel near the bay, watching the sunset glide past the Golden Gate Bridge. As the sun dipped, he pulled a small note from his pocket. Isabel's handwritten words, passed to him via a volunteer. "No one's too late to start again. What matters is the path you choose for your light." He smiled. He couldn't return to the past, but he could move forward as a new man. That evening, Isabel stood on her hotel balcony, gazing at the glowing city. Its streets sparkled like stars across the sky. She thought of her journey not with sadness, but gratitude. Every loss, every ruin, had led to this moment. A smile without pain. She wrote in her notebook, "Light never stays still. It takes new forms, sometimes a painting, sometimes a stranger's smile, and sometimes the silence between two people who've learned to forgive." A shooting star streaked across the sky. Isabel closed her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, because the light has returned." Winter came early that year. Snow blanketed Brooklyn's rooftops, Christmas lights twinkling along the avenues. A massive banner hung on the main street. 5 years light continues. Isabel stood in a grand hall, where hundreds of students gathered for the opening of the Light Foundation's first community art academy. No longer a small studio, the project was now a non-profit training gifted but underserved youth, turning pain into creation, memories into living energy. The space overflowed with color. Walls held students' abstract paintings, polished wooden floors gleamed, and the scents of paint and fresh wood mingled. Isabel walked the halls, hearing joyful laughter. This place seemed born to replace the world's cold noise with the sound of hope. Grace approached, holding a list. "Over 500 signed up for the first class," she said, tired but elated. "Even kids from Texas, Alaska, Isa, we've come so far." Isabel smiled, eyes shining with pride. "We haven't gone far, Grace. We've just come closer to people's hearts." At the opening ceremony, journalists, social organizations, and those touched by light filled the room. Isabel didn't give a long speech. She told her story simple, unflinching, unembellished. "Years ago, I thought the world only valued the strong. But when I fell, I learned true strength lies in gentleness and the ability to forgive and love again." The hall fell silent. No applause, just people standing in quiet tribute to her journey. From that moment, Isabel knew light was more than a project. It was a shared language, where people found themselves in others' stories. Across town, Ethan worked in a small music center, its walls lined with old guitars, warm light spilling over a worn piano. He taught kids from tough neighborhoods to play, to hear their own hearts in each note. A boy asked, "Why does music make people cry?" Ethan smiled. "Because sometimes, tears are how the heart says it's found something real." That night, alone, he sat under the dim light, unfinished sheet music before him. On the table was an envelope from Grace, inviting him to join Light Expanded for freelance artists. He touched it, silent for a long time. No apologies needed, no past to erase. Just one small act to let others' light shine through his hands. The next day, he emailed back, "I'd like to teach music to the kids in the program. No need to list my name anywhere." Weeks later, at the academy, Isabel walked the halls, hearing music drift from a classroom. A piano played warm, slow, imperfect, but deeply true. She stood outside, listening. A man played, his back to her, surrounded by softly singing children. She didn't see his face but felt something familiar in the melody. No need to enter, no need to ask. Isabel placed a hand on her chest, smiling. She knew all paths of light led to the same place where hearts find peace. That afternoon, snow fell lightly on the academy's roof. A 10-year-old girl, Mia, ran to Isabel, holding a scribbled drawing. "Miss, this is my painting. I call it a heart with a window." Isabel raised an eyebrow. "Why a window?" "Because if everyone's heart opens a little, more light can come in." Isabel laughed, tears welling. "You're wiser than me, kid." Mia's words became the Light Foundation's new motto: open hearts, brighter worlds. That night, as the city dimmed, Isabel sat in her small office. Snow fell outside, blanketing the world in white. She wrote the final line in her journal, chronicling Light's journey. "I can't change the world. But if today I make one person believe they're worthy of love, maybe the world has changed a little." She closed the book, setting it by the window where golden light reflected. Downstairs, the piano played on, soft and warm, like a promise. Light would never fade, as long as someone believed in it. The following spring, sunlight bathed a newly opened building in Lower Manhattan. Silver letters gleamed out front. The Light Center, a space for healing and hope. Isabel stood still, listening to the breeze through the windows. Inside, open spaces glowed with natural light, white walls reflecting vibrant artwork from students nationwide. The new center was the result of over 2 years of tireless work. From a Brooklyn warehouse to a national network, Light now had a true home. Grace approached, holding a thick folder. 3 months until our first semester. Over 200 signed-up artists, teachers, even people who've never touched a brush. Isabel smiled. "We're not teaching them to paint, Grace. We're teaching them to find themselves." She walked the halls, touching a wall displaying photos of past participants. Each face was a story, each smile proof of compassion's power. The final room was an open studio light poured through a glass ceiling, casting shimmering streaks on the wooden floor. This would host sharing sessions, small exhibitions, and classes. At the press conference launching the center, a reporter asked, "Did you ever imagine light would go this far?" Isabel smiled softly, her gaze deepening. I didn't think that far. I just knew that when you light someone's way, that light spreads. And when enough people do it, a whole city shines. The room fell silent for a moment, then applause rose like a gentle wave. Isabel wasn't proud, she was grateful. This path wasn't hers alone, but the result of countless hands and hearts sharing one belief. Everyone deserves to heal. In the back of the room, Ethan sat quietly. He hadn't registered or announced himself. He was there as a volunteer, helping move supplies and artwork. Hearing Isabel, he felt lighter, not from guilt's release, but from rare peace. After the event, he left, avoiding the crowd, leaving only a small envelope in the center's mailbox. Inside was an anonymous check and a brief note. For those still seeking their light. Days later, the Light Center buzzed with activity. Students arrived from everywhere. The jobless, college kids, single mothers, veterans. They sat around wooden tables, holding brushes and pens, sharing small life stories. Isabel was there, not as a teacher, but a listener. She didn't correct paintings or judge strokes. She only asked, "What does this painting make you feel?" And when they answered with smiles or tears, she knew the center had fulfilled its purpose. One evening, she found the envelope in the mailbox. She read the note, pausing for a long time. She didn't need to guess who sent it. She didn't call or write back. She only touched the paper, whispering, "Thank you for sending your light here." In May, the center hosted its first exhibition, The Human Light. Hundreds of paintings lined the walls, each a fragment of hope. Isabel walked among them, heart full. She met students from the first Brooklyn class, now guides, storytellers, creators. An elderly reporter approached, asking quietly, "Do you ever think about resting? You've done so much for others." Isabel smiled. "Actually, when I help someone find their light, I'm illuminated too. The only way to keep light is to keep sharing it." Night fell, the center's lights glowing brightly in the city. Isabel stood at the second-floor window, watching passers-by. She no longer felt weighed down by the past. It was like a finished painting, dark patches, bright streaks. But together, they gave it depth. She wrote in her journal, "I'm not seeking a happy ending. I just want every day to hold a small beginning. And if someone asks where the light is, I'll point to them and say, it's right there." 18 months after the New York Center's opening, Isabel stood in the Grand Hall of Geneva's International Art Institute. The glass building reflected a pale blue sky. Outside, flags from over 30 nations fluttered, like strokes in a vast painting. The event, The Light Beyond Borders, was her first international conference, uniting artists, psychologists, and activists to share how inner light connects people across cultures, religions, and pasts. Before the ceremony, Isabel stood in the preparation room, admiring a white silk scarf around her neck, a gift from Grace. "You've come so far, Isa," Grace said, voice trembling with emotion. Isabel replied softly, "We've come together. I just carry everyone's light." As the opening music played, the 1,000-strong audience stood. The giant screen replayed Light's Journey, from a Brooklyn warehouse to classes in Seattle, Chicago, then new centers in Lisbon, Seoul, Buenos Aires. Images of ordinary people, smiles, trembling hands holding brushes. Each frame proved art could heal what time couldn't. When Isabel took the stage, the room hushed. She smiled, light reflecting in her deep eyes. "I once thought freedom was doing what you want. Now I know freedom is when you're no longer caged by what hurt you." The room fell silent, then applause roared like waves. Isabel continued, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It's looking at the past without letting your heart break again." A young woman in the front row sobbed, standing to hold up a photo of an art class in Kenya, where they painted refugee camp walls with bright colors. "Thank you, Light. Because of you, we know we can still dream." Isabel smiled, her heart full. In that moment, she knew. Light had outgrown her hands. It was the world's flame of freedom. That evening, after the program, Isabel, Grace, and old students sat by Lake Geneva. The moon reflected on the water, cool breezes carrying lavender's scent. Lila, now a renowned painter with her Whispering Walls collection, asked, "Isabel, do you ever regret it? If you could choose again, would you want a life without pain, without upheaval?" Isabel gazed at the lake, where small ripples gleamed like candles. "No," she said slowly. "Without darkness, I wouldn't know how vital light is. And without falling, I wouldn't have learned to stand without resentment." Silence fell, a serene peace spreading. Grace raised her glass, voice choked, to light, and to those who dared find it. They clinked glasses, the crystal chiming like music in the night. In New York, Ethan was at the Light Center, helping teens paint a mural, a giant sun of countless colored strokes. A girl asked, "Do you know Isabel? She's amazing." He smiled softly. "I do. She taught me something I couldn't learn in a lifetime." "What's that?" "That no one's born perfect, but everyone can be better than yesterday." He turned away, feeling a peace he'd never known. In that moment, Ethan understood. Forgiveness sometimes needs no words or handshakes. It's living better to prove another's light still shines in you. Late that night, Isabel opened her hotel window, gazing at Geneva's sleeping city. Under moonlight, her reflection in the glass showed a new woman, calm, free, grateful. She wrote in her small notebook, "Tomorrow, I return to New York. Some need my light, and some places, I still need to find light for myself." The breeze flipped the pages. She smiled, not from sadness or pride, but from being whole in the present. Her flight from Geneva landed at JFK in the early morning mist. New York was as loud and hurried as ever. But to Isabel, it felt softer, less chaotic, less heavy. She stood in the arrivals hall, coffee in hand, watching people pass, smiling. This was where it all began. A year and a half away, light had grown beyond expectation. But with fame came quiet pressures. Sponsors wanted commercialization. Some artists sought to brand light globally. Isabel knew, if careless, the original humane flame could be swallowed by profit and fame, what she'd once seen and feared most. Her first day back at the center, she entered the familiar space. Paintings still hung, but new paint and bright lights felt slightly foreign. Grace greeted her, face radiant yet tired. "We've got 2 international partnership offers," Grace said, "and a new fund wants to rename the center for branding. The Light Center by Aura Group sounds pretty chic." Isabel smiled, shaking her head. "Light can't have a brand, Grace. It only has people." Grace fell silent. Isabel's answer was firm, not cold. She wasn't against growth, she just wanted to preserve the project's soul, born from pain, compassion, and a desire to heal, not marketing campaigns. Over the next days, Isabel spent time with old students. She visited classes, talked, listened. A former office worker now taught kids to paint in the Bronx. A veteran ran photography classes for the disabled. Each story convinced Isabel the flame still burned, needing only her sincerity to keep it alive. One evening, she returned to her old apartment overlooking Central Park. Everything was as before: bookshelves, easel, a photo of the first light group. She turned on the lamp, opened the window, letting cold air rush in. On the table, her unfinished notebook lay open. She added a line, "When light grows, it needs more humility than ever." Across town, Ethan worked at Open Hands, a non-profit. He ran a new program using music and art to help teens recover from trauma. Though no longer tied to finance, he felt richer than ever, not in money, but purpose. One afternoon, helping kids set up an exhibition, the manager approached with an invitation. "Isabel Caldwell's giving a talk at the center next week," she said. "Wanna go?" Ethan paused. He hadn't heard her name spoken publicly in a while. He looked at the paper, heart stirring not from the past, but gratitude for the woman who helped him see himself again, without a word. The day of the talk, the hall was packed. Isabel appeared simply in a beige sweater, hair tied back. No grand stage lights, just her, a mic, and a circle of listeners. She spoke of Light's journey, how a small idea could save thousands if fueled by faith. Closing, she said, "Sometimes, light doesn't come from who ignites it, but from those it illuminates. I only carried a small lamp, and the world taught me how to keep it burning." Applause thundered. In the back, Ethan quietly stood, unnoticed. He watched her a moment, then stepped outside. New York's afternoon sky blazed pink, reflecting on the Hudson. He paused, breathing the salty breeze, feeling lighter. He didn't need to meet her. In some way, they were still walking together, 2 souls lighting each other from afar. That night, Isabel sat by her window, gazing at the glowing city. Grace texted, You spoke beautifully today. Someone stood in the back the whole time, looked familiar, but I couldn't place them. Isabel smiled, not replying. She wrote in her notebook, "Light doesn't need to be seen to exist. It only needs to spread, even in silence." She closed the book, blew out the candle on her table. The room darkened, lit only by the city's faint glow through the curtains. In that stillness, Isabel felt clearly. Every loss, transformed, becomes the best thing we leave behind. 5 years after the Brooklyn Gallery opened, the Light Center was a haven for those seeking peace, a symbol of hope in bustling New York. Tonight, the building glowed softly gold. On the rooftop, the Circle of Light exhibition unfolded. Paintings, photos, and music from hundreds of artists formed pieces of one story. Every darkness could become art, if seen with a bright heart. Isabel stood at the entrance in a simple white dress. Her long hair flowed, eyes reflecting the calm of someone who'd weathered storms. No media lenses, no clamor of fame, only real people, real smiles. Grace approached, hugging her tightly. 5 years, Issa. Can you believe it? Isabel smiled. I don't count by years, Grace. I count by the hearts we've lit. The exhibition began with a light and music performance. Walls projected Light's journey from Brooklyn to Geneva, then worldwide. When the film ended, the room hushed, only breaths and quiet tears remained. Isabel took the stage, her voice warm and soft. 5 years ago, I was just someone trying to find myself. Today, I realize when one person dares to heal, they teach the world to love again. She paused, scanning the room, familiar faces, those who'd walked with her from the start. In the back, a man stood silently. No one noticed him, only light reflecting off the glass, casting onto his pensive face. Isabel recognized him almost instantly, though years had passed. No coldness, no proud gaze, only the stillness of a man who'd learned humility. Their eyes met across the crowd. No words needed. A nod said it all. We've come far, but the light remains. After the ceremony, Isabel stepped onto the rooftop. A gentle breeze carried lavender from the small garden she'd planted at the center's opening. Under moonlight, the city sparkled like a sea of stars. A voice spoke softly behind her. New York's never been this quiet. She turned. Ethan stood a few steps away. Light from decorative lamps reflected in his eyes, not the glow of glamour, but of someone who'd learned what matters. Hello, Ethan, she smiled. Hello, Isabel. A warm silence passed, like a long breath after years of quiet. Ethan looked around, then said softly, I just wanted to say, thank you. Not for forgiving me, but for keeping light in this world. Because of it, I learned how to live, Isabel replied, her voice like a breeze. No one keeps light for themselves, Ethan. It passes through us, then spreads to others. You're doing that too. He lowered his head, a faint smile rippling. They stood by the railing, gazing at the city's distant lights blending into the night. No weight, no wounds, just a strange feeling, true peace. As Ethan left, Isabel returned to the exhibition. A new painting stood at the center, a collaboration by hundreds of students worldwide, titled We Are Light. On a gentle green canvas, thousands of colors merged into a giant heart. Each stroke was a story, a piece of a soul. Isabel stood before it for a long time, then touched it gently. She whispered, as if to the universe, thank you for the years gone by. Thank you for the darkness, because it made light meaningful. She turned, seeing young students laughing, snapping photos. The breeze lifted the curtains, moonlight flooding in, illuminating the room. Isabel closed her eyes, breathing deeply. In the heart of the sleepless city, she felt truly free, not because everything was perfect, but because she'd embraced every imperfection as part of a larger painting, the canvas of life. As the exhibition closed, the room's lights dimmed, leaving only the city's glow through the glass. Isabel gazed at the central painting, hundreds of colors, none perfect, but together forming a radiant circle. She realized that was life itself. Without darkness, we'd never know light. Without pain, there'd be no compassion. Without partings, there'd be no heartfelt reunions. Isabel smiled. The light in her no longer came from pain, but from gratitude for those who walked with her, those who left, and those whose wounds helped her grow. This story may end, but the light it sparked still spreads in every heart. If you've walked through darkness, believe the light waits within your heart. If this story touched you, share it, to let the light spread, because who knows, one small act of yours might ignite another life.